Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're going to be taking a really fascinating journey today.
Yeah, we're going to be diving deep into the world of fine art photography.
That's right. We're talking about how it all began, how it's evolved over the years, and where it stands now.
And we're going to be focusing in on a particular exhibition called Poems of Light.
By the photographer Gan Barber, and we're lucky enough to have some great sources for this.
We have Gan's artist statement, which gives us a glimpse into his creative process and philosophy,
And we've got a ton of information about the history of fine art photography.
which helps us put Barber's work into a larger context.
So yeah, think of this as your crash course, your express lane, to understanding how photography became an art form.
And how it continues to push boundaries even today.
So I guess we should probably start at the beginning,
Which means we're going all the way back to the 1830s.
back when photography was just emerging as a thing.
Exactly. And that's when these two pioneers, Louis Daguerre and William Henry Fox Talbot, entered the scene.
And they both came up with groundbreaking inventions. Daguerre invented the daguerreotype.
Right, and this process created a really sharp image directly on a silver-plated copper sheet.
Imagine that. A one-of-a-kind image, no negatives, no copies. Just a single unique image,
It's pretty amazing. And then Talbot developed the calotype.
which used paper negatives, so you could actually make multiple prints.
Now, at the time, the art world wasn't exactly thrilled about these developments.
Yeah, many artists were super skeptical. They saw photography as a threat to traditional art forms.
Like painting, for example. I mean, they thought, why bother painting when you can just take a picture, right?
Right. One famous critic of photography was the poet Charles Baudelaire. He called photography the enemy of art.
He thought it was soulless and mechanical.
Yeah, he basically believed that photography lacked the artist's hand, the creativity.
But when you look at those early photographs, it's clear that there were artistic intentions behind them.
Take Daguerre, for instance. He created these elaborate still lifes.
He arranged objects meticulously, paid so much attention to lighting and composition.
It was all about creating these theatrical, almost staged scenes
And Talbot was also exploring the artistic side of photography,
with his photograms.
which involved placing objects directly onto light-sensitive paper.
It created these really unique and almost abstract images.
Yeah, it's like early abstract photography, right?
And let's not forget his calotypes. He photographed everyday scenes, landscapes, people,
Yeah.
but there's this real poetic quality to his work.
He wasn't just trying to document reality. He was trying to capture something deeper, something more evocative.
And then there's Carlton Watkins.
Oh, yeah, Watkins. He's best known for his landscape photography, especially his images of Yosemite.
His photos were huge, like seriously massive prints.
And they captured the grandeur and the majesty of the Yosemite Valley in a way that had never been seen before.
People were just blown away by these photographs. And, they actually played a role in the early conservation movement.
Yeah, people saw those images and they thought, wow, we need to protect this incredible place.
So you can see, even in those early years, photography was already proving that it could be more than just a mechanical process.
It could be a powerful tool for artistic expression and for social change.
And it could also be a powerful tool for making portraits more accessible.
Oh, absolutely. Daguerreotypes made it possible for everyday people to have their portraits taken.
Which was a big deal because before that, only the wealthy could afford to have their portraits painted.
Right. So the invention of photography democratized portraiture in a way.
But, the quest for better, sharper, faster photography continued
And that's where the wet plate collodion process comes in.
the 1850s.
Exactly. And this process allowed for sharper images and shorter exposure times.
But it was still pretty cumbersome. You had to prepare these wet plates right before you took the picture.
And you had to develop them immediately afterwards. It wasn't exactly point and shoot,
But it did open up new creative possibilities.
especially for portraiture. Julia Margaret Cameron was one of the first photographers to really take advantage of the wet plate process.
Her work is really amazing. It's so distinctive.
Her portraits are very soft-focused, almost dreamlike. They have a real painterly quality.
She often photographed her friends and family.
And she wasn't afraid to experiment. She used different lighting techniques, different poses.
Like her portrait of Sir John Herschel, who was a famous astronomer,
Hmm.
or her image, The Kiss of Peace, which is just so tender and beautiful.
Yeah, she was breaking away from that really stiff and formal style of portraiture that was common at the time.
So we have this incredible experimentation happening in portraiture. And at the same time, still life photography is also emerging as a recognized art form.
And Roger Fenton is a key figure in that development. He's probably best known for his war photography, but he also created these incredibly detailed still lifes.
Like Still Life with Fruit and Decanter from 1860. It's amazing how much detail he was able to capture, even with the limitations of the wet plate process.
Right. I mean, the composition, the lighting, the textures, it's all so carefully considered. It's a real work of art.
And we also have to mention Anna Atkins.
Ah, Atkins, a true pioneer.
She was one of the first people to use photography for scientific purposes.
She created these beautiful cyanotypes of algae.
They're basically blueprints, but they're also incredibly striking images.
With these intricate patterns and these beautiful shades of blue, it really blurs the line between science and art, doesn't it?
It makes you wonder where that line even is. I mean, is it possible to create a purely objective scientific document?
I don't know. The photographer's choices, framing the shot, choosing what to photograph, all that influences the image, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of technological advancements, the development of dry plate technology in the late 19th century was huge.
Oh yeah, totally changed the game. No more messing around with wet plates.
Suddenly, photographers could take their time setting up shots.
They could travel more easily. It really opened up a whole new world of possibilities.
And it led to a new wave of landscape photographers like George Fiske, who captured stunning images.
His photos are so sharp and clear, and you can really see the influence of dry plate technology in his work.
But dry plates also helped pave the way for a new artistic movement, pictorialism.
Yeah, pictorialism really took off in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and it was all about making photographs look more like paintings.
So, they'd use soft focus lenses
Or they'd manipulate the negatives in the darkroom,
or use special printing processes like gum bichromate.
which is a really labor-intensive process, but it could create these beautiful painterly effects.
And some of the key figures in pictorialism were people like Gertrude Casbier.
She was known for her portraits, often of women and children, and they have this really soft, ethereal quality.
And Adolf de Meyer. He created these gorgeous still lifes, again with that really soft focus, almost dreamlike quality.
Yeah, and then there's George Davison. His landscape photographs, like the Onion Field from 1890, also aimed for this sort of impressionistic, painterly style.
And it's interesting to contrast the pictorialists with someone like Nadar, who was working earlier in the 19th century.
Nadar's portraits are so direct and so powerful. He wasn't interested in softening or romanticizing his subjects.
He wanted to capture their essence, their raw humanity.
Yeah, he was famous for his portraits of famous people, like Charles Baudelaire, the poet we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
and Sarah Bernhardt, the great actress.
His portraits are so psychologically revealing. It's like you can see right into their souls.
And you can really see that same directness, that same focus on capturing the essence of the subject in the work of the straight photographers who emerged in the early 20th century.
Like Ansel Adams.
Ah, yes, Ansel Adams, one of the most famous landscape photographers of all time.
He's best known for his stunning black and white photographs of the American West, especially Yosemite.
He was a master of technique. He developed the zone system, which is a way of controlling exposure and development to achieve a really wide range of tones in his prints.
His photos are so sharp, so detailed, and you can really feel his awe and reverence for the natural world.
And it's not just landscapes. Think about Edward Weston's close-up photographs of everyday objects, like his iconic image Pepper Num 30.
It's just a pepper, but he transforms it into this amazing sculptural form.
Right. He makes you see the world in a new way. And then there's August Sander.
He was a German portrait photographer. His project, Face of Our Time, was really ambitious.
It was this attempt to document German society through a series of portraits.
And his portraits are very straightforward, very unadorned.
He wasn't trying to flatter his subjects or to impose his own artistic vision. He just wanted to capture them as they were.
And it's during this period that abstract photography really takes off.
Oh, yeah. And it takes some really interesting forms. Think about Alvin Langdon Coburn's photographs.
These were these radical images that he created by using mirrors and prisms. They're basically abstract patterns and forms.
They're like these kaleidoscopes of light and color. They were totally unlike anything that had come before in photography.
And speaking of new technology, the 35mm Leica camera was a game changer.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly you had these small, portable cameras that could capture images really quickly.
And they allowed photographers like Henri Cartier-Bresson to really capture those fleeting moments, those decisive moments, as he called them.
It was a whole new approach to street photography.
And let's not forget the experimental work of artists like Man Ray and Laszlo Moholy-Nagy.
Man-rays rayographs were created by placing objects directly onto light-sensitive paper. They're basically cameraless photographs, and they have this really cool, surreal quality.
And Moholy-Nagy was doing all sorts of amazing things with photograms and light at the Bauhaus.
They were really pushing the boundaries of photography,
Well,
challenging our very idea of what a photograph could be.
and then, of course, you have the arrival of color photography.
A huge development. Kodachrome was introduced in the 1930s.
And it made color photography much more accessible and practical. And you see photographers like Elliot Porter really embracing color.
His book, In Wildness, is filled with these stunning landscapes, and it really showcases the possibilities of color photography.
And then there's Irving Penn. He was a master of still life photography.
And he used color in a really interesting way. His images are so precise, so meticulous.
But they're also really vibrant and engaging.
And at the same time, you have photographers like Dorothea Lange. She was a documentary photographer who captured the human cost of the Great Depression.
Her most famous photograph is Migrant Mother. It's this incredibly powerful image of a mother and her children. And it really captures the desperation and the resilience of people struggling to survive.
It's an image that really stays with you.
And then there's Aaron Siskind.
Another photographer who found beauty in the mundane.
He took close-up photographs of things like peeling paint or cracked asphalt, and he turned them into these abstract compositions.
His images are really about texture, form, and light. And then there's Harry Callahan. He was known for his innovative use of multiple exposures.
So you'd have these layered images. Sometimes they were abstract, sometimes they were more representational, but they always had this really interesting dreamlike quality.
And then in the 1960s and 70s, you have the emergence of conceptual photography.
Where the idea behind the photograph becomes more important than the actual image.
Right. Photographers like Louis Baltz and Joe Deal were part of the new topographics movement.
And they focused on documenting the human-altered landscape, suburbs, industrial parks, things like that.
Their photos are often very stark and detached. They're not trying to romanticize the landscape. They're just presenting it as it is.
And you also have photographers like Richard Avedon, who is known for his really stark portraits.
Yeah, his photos are really stripped down. There's no artifice. He really wanted to capture the raw essence of his subjects.
And then there's Cindy Sherman. Her work is really about identity and representation.
She uses photography to explore different roles and personas.
And then there's Barbara Caston. She's known for her abstract photographs.
She creates these really intricate compositions, often using geometric shapes and bold colors, and they're all very carefully staged.
And then, of course, we have the digital revolution.
Oh, yeah. Digital technology has totally transformed photography.
It's given photographers even more control over the image-making process.
And it's led to some really interesting new approaches to photography, like the work of Andreas Gursky.
His photographs are huge. I mean, like, really, really huge. And incredibly detailed.
He often uses digital manipulation to create these vast panoramas.
And then there's Thomas Ruff. He also uses digital manipulation, but in a very different way.
He sometimes pushes his images to the point of abstraction, pixelated images, blurred images.
And then you have Gregory Crutzen. His photos are like film stills.
They're incredibly elaborate and staged. They often have this really eerie, cinematic quality.
And Annie Leibovitz. She's still creating those iconic portraits that she's known for.
But now she's using digital tools to enhance her images.
And there's Sharon Corr. She actually recreates famous paintings using photography.
Her work raises all sorts of interesting questions about the nature of art and representation.
And then there are photographers like Richard Misrak and Edward Bertinsky.
They're both known for their large format landscape photographs.
But their work is really about the impact of humans on the environment. The scars that we leave on the landscape.
It's really powerful stuff. And then there's Wolfgang Tillmans.
He's a German photographer who's really pushed the boundaries of abstract photography.
His images are often very fluid and atmospheric. Sometimes he doesn't even use a camera. He'll create images by exposing light-sensitive paper directly to light.
And so now we have this incredibly diverse range of approaches to fine art photography.
And it's really exciting to see how the medium continues to evolve.
It's not just about technical skill anymore. It's really about vision.
And it's about the artist's ability to communicate something meaningful through their work.
And speaking of vision, we're going to be talking about Gan Barber in just a minute.
His exhibition, Poems of Light, is opening soon at True Grit Art Gallery in Middleboro.
But first, we need to talk about the gallery itself. because it has a really interesting connection to the history of photography.
Oh, yeah. The building that houses the gallery was actually built around 1850 by a guy named Levi Thatcher.
And Levi Thatcher was Middleboro's first commercial photographer.
And he actually designed the building to be a photography studio.
The upstairs was his daguerreotype studio.
He had these big windows to let in lots of natural light, which was essential for taking those long exposures.
It's amazing to think about, isn't it? People were having their portraits taken in that very building over 170 years ago.
It's a real reminder that history is all around us, and that even the most ordinary places can have these fascinating stories to tell.
But as photographic technology evolved, the building was used for other purposes.
At one point, it was even a dentist's office.
Imagine that, from capturing smiles to fixing teeth.
But now, with True Grit Art Gallery, photography has returned to the building. It's a real homecoming.
And it's the perfect setting for Gan Barber's exhibition.
So let's talk about Gan Barber.
Yeah. He's a local photographer based in Lakeville, Massachusetts.
And his exhibition, Poems of Light, opens on Saturday, May 10th at True Grit Art Gallery.
It's going to run through May 31st.
And when you read his artist statement, you really get a sense of his deep connection to nature.
He talks about wanting to capture the beauty of the natural world through his photographs.
He says that he sees his photographs as vibrant, living compositions.
And he's really meticulous about his printing process. He prints his images himself on 100% cotton rag paper.
Using archival pigment inks.
So his prints are going to last for a long, long time.
And he's really drawn to both the grand landscapes and the small details of nature.
Hills, meadows, woods, trees, water.
And he's particularly interested in the way that light transforms the landscape.
He talks about being inspired by the early morning light and the late afternoon light.
He wants his photographs to evoke a sense of wonder and awe in the viewer.
And when I look at his photographs, I really do feel that sense of wonder.
Yeah, he has this real ability to capture the beauty of the everyday world, the things that we often take for granted.
And I think his work really does connect to the history of fine art photography that we've been talking about.
Oh, absolutely. You can see the influence of photographers like Talbot, Weston, Adams, and Misrack in his work.
But he's also developed his own unique style, his own unique vision.
And I think that's what makes his work so compelling.
So I would definitely encourage everyone to go see Gan Barber's exhibition.
The opening reception is on Saturday, May 10th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at True Grit Art Gallery.
It's free and open to the public.
And, it's a great opportunity to support a local artist.
And to see some really beautiful photographs.
And to maybe even rediscover your own sense of wonder at the natural world.
So we've come a long way on this deep dive, haven't we?
We've traveled from the very beginnings of photography to the present day.
And we've seen how this medium has evolved from a purely mechanical process to a powerful form of artistic expression.
And, it's amazing to think that it all started with people like Levi Thatcher.
Right here in Middleboro.
Capturing images of their community.
And now, over 170 years later, Gan Barber is continuing that tradition in that very same building.
It's a beautiful reminder of the enduring power of photography.
And of the human desire to capture the world around us.
And I think it's a great question to leave our listeners with.
What light are you trying to capture?
What truth are you trying to preserve?
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.